Today's reveal for the Empires of the Ascended expansion features Kindred as the champion, along with some additional cards, and we're going to cover them all, but I really appreciate that they decided to follow up yesterday's reveal of Nasus with Kindred, because Nasus introduced us to the concept of Slay and getting benefits from that, and Kindred is a follow-up to that. So we're going to take a look at Kindred, and I just have to say up front that I really adore this design. So Kindred is a 5-cost Shadow Isles champion. It's got a 4/4 body, but it does have quick attack, and it reads, the first time you slay a unit each round, I mark the weakest enemy. Round end, kill my marked enemy. Now, again, you need to remember that slay can trigger anytime that you have killed an ally or an enemy unit, and so Kindred being in Shadow Isles, for example, means you can self-slay. You can kill your own units with something like a Ravenous Butcher, Glimpse the Unthinkable, on and on and on. And then that will still trigger the slay. So Kindred allows you to kill your own units, and then at round end, it kills whatever the marked enemy is, the weakest enemy. And Kindred also potentially gives you 2-for-1s with itself. So you play it because it's got quick attack. Maybe it gets chump blocked by something, but in doing so, it then marks whatever the weakest enemy is, and then Kindred kills that. Now, from a game design perspective, I love this because it also gives your opponent some freedom to counterplay this. What I mean by that is that depending on how you order your attacks, they might be able to recognize that the trigger is going to occur on a unit from you killing something first, and then say land on like a 1/1, and then after that trigger occurs, you can have the 1/1 die as well. That means that you get out of it getting the free kill, if that makes sense, at the end of the turn. But in doing that, right, so it goes back in the other direction, you are still in some way helping Kindred to level up, because level up requirement for Kindred is I've seen you slay 2 of my marked enemies. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be from Kindred's trigger. It's just I've seen you slay 2 of my marked enemies. So there's going to be this kind of cat and mouse game where you dance around, do I want to level up Kindred, but also do I want to give them potentially free kills on marked things? And I just kind of like that. So level 2 version of Kindred gets the standard +1/+1 to the body. So it becomes a 5-cost 5/5 with quick attack. Still reads, the first time you slay a unit each round, I mark the weakest enemy. But now it also says grant me +2/+2. So you grant Kindred +2/+2 and mark the weakest enemy. Round end, still kill my marked enemy. Now, one other thing that I want to note here is that yesterday I had mentioned maybe Nasus is the first champion that really makes a dent in Undying decks, because there was such a clear synergy between Nasus and his playstyle and Undying decks. And Undying decks are ones that I have enjoyed historically. In fact, my best performing in terms of views video for Legends of Runeterra is me playing an Undying deck. I say it's my favorite deck of that expansion, and I stick by that. Noxcria Arena Undying is like a comfort deck for me. When I just want to mess around, I will load it up and I enjoy it, win or loss. Kindred is a Shadow Isles champion that I think is a very strong contender to becoming an auto include in Undying lists, because it does great things when you are already killing your own units. And in many ways, so before I was running Noxcria Arena, and that was a 5-cost kind of static tool that allowed you to exploit Undying into getting free kills, because the problem with Undying as a deck is that your best units, again, usually the Undying, they can't block, and so you need help on the defensive side while you're developing. And so Noxcria Arena was meant to allow you to take advantage of the Undying bodies and have them kill opposing units to get you rolling in the mid game. Kindred can kind of do the same thing, but you also get a body out of it, you get a champion out of it, and you stay within the region. So I don't even have to go into Noxus. I can pair Shadow Isles back with Demacia to take advantage of things like single combat. I could potentially pair it with Shurima to also get those Nasus benefits as well. But Kindred allows you to stay in Shadow Isles, get benefits from slaying your own units, help you kill enemy units along the way as well. And it has the exact same like long-term win condition, because the Undying, like your entire point to playing them is that they just progressively get bigger and bigger and bigger the longer the game goes. And Kindred, the longer it stays on the board and the more you keep slaying things, is going to do the same thing, because once you've leveled Kindred up, it's going to continue to get granted that +2/+2. So Kindred is just perfect, in my opinion, for including in Undying lists, and I look forward to playing it there. But I do think that Kindred could fit in other lists. I do sincerely see this as potentially a Shadow Isles control tool, because its passive effect is a very powerful one for allowing you to control the board. And again, because it's whenever you slay a unit, it doesn't mean that you have to kill your own. It could be a tool, for example, that allows you to go for 2-for-1s. So turn 5 rolls around, you play Kindred, you've got some spell mana banked, and you Vile Feast or Unspeakable Horror or something. Or maybe you're playing Karina Control and you Mystic Shot something, whatever. And then in doing so, you've probably killed one of their small units, which then means that unless they have a bunch of small units, the unit Kindred marks is going to be of better value. And then as long as Kindred survives, you kill that one as well, and you kind of start your snowball. So I think Kindred is a fantastic champion as a control tool and a great fit for Undying. Now, the last piece that is like officially Kindred is obviously Kindred's champion spell. Like all champion spells, this one can be run as an individual card in decks as well. This card is Spirit Journey. This is a 5-cost fast spell, and it says kill a unit, then revive it. And I like this because it's versatile. It seems like it's kind of expensive at first glance, but this is like Shadow Isles' version of Entomb, the Lysandra spell. And again, just like Entomb, this allows you to potentially save your own units. It allows you to re-trigger summon effects. It allows you to pseudo stun opposing units, because if you kill it and revive it while it's in combat, for example, it takes it out of combat. And again, this will count as a slay. So this will help you trigger things in that regard. I think that it looks expensive on first glance, but the sheer versatility of this, I think, warrants the cost, because it's going to be way too powerful to be something that you could pull off with just spell mana, for example. So somewhere in the 4 to 5 range is probably correct. But I do think this is versatile enough to consider in certain decks. Now, it's not going to be, you know, an S tier auto include staple in Shadow Isles. I don't suspect, but the right decks might consider running this. Another card I want to highlight that is the last one on this graphic is Lamb's Respite, or Lamb's Respite, depending on how you pronounce it. This is a 2-cost slow spell, and it says give the weakest ally I can't take damage or die this round. Now, when I first read this, I immediately was like, oh, I can't wait to play this with what is it, Get Out of the Way. Essentially the card that allows you to make your buffs that normally last until end of turn last permanently, because then this becomes this becomes a great way to give you slowly but surely a board of stuff that just can't die, right? It's what is it, Unbreakable Spirit, but instead of costing 8 in fast speed, it's 2 in slow speed. So a little bit of memeing there. I don't think that's the best use for this, but if you are looking for other reasons to run this, this is a great way to protect units and then play other triggers that would potentially have killed them. So while Kindred wants you to slay things, this card is something that would allow you to protect a unit and then play Ravenous Butcher without having to kill said unit. Now, at slow speed, it's not, unfortunately, that great of a combat trick in response to things, but there could still potentially be uses for this if you play it ahead of time, knowing that you're about to attack into unfavorable trades, just because it forces your opponent to, you know, chew up something potentially with a blocker that they know they're not going to get the value out of it they want. They might prevent the damage, but they're not going to get that trade. I don't know if this is going to be good enough to include or not. it's certainly cheap enough. I think that the cost is right for an effect like this, but because it's slow speed and because it's the weakest ally, it can create some clunky situations. And so I don't know if that's going to offset the potential power boost that a card like this would give you. We're going to move on to the next set of cards that were revealed today. And I kind of broke them up into two different groups. On the left, we have some neat inclusions that are kind of Kindred themed because they rely on you, killing an ally to do something. So we're going to start with Mask Mother. This is a 2-cost 2/2 in Shadow Isles, has the fearsome keyword, and on play, you kill an ally to grant me its stats and keywords. So there's obviously some fun stuff you can do with this. You can eat an elusive unit, and now you have elusive and fearsome on a bigger body. This is also nice because this gives you that slay trigger without necessarily sacrificing board stats, though. Whenever you go what I call vertical, right? You think about boards can go wide or boards can go tall. A wide board means you've got a bunch of units. A tall board means you have 1 or 2 really big units, and there are vulnerabilities to both. Usually boards that go wide are susceptible to area of effect removal, things like Avalanche, Withering Wail, etc. Boards that go tall are more likely to be disrupted by something like a Vengeance, things like that. So Mask Mother takes your board and makes it go tall, but it also gives you those slay triggers, and that might end up just being enough. I don't know, we'll see, but there are, revealed today anyway, some additional cards that give you slay triggers that have some pretty cool effects as well. So the next one here on the left hand of the screen is the Ether Fiend. This is a 7-cost 6/4 with fearsome, but it says on play, I kill an ally to kill an enemy. Now, this does have the little icon in front of the play effect, so it creates a skill. That means that that skill could also be hit by something like Deny, but this is a relatively powerful effect on a body. Killing an opposing unit and getting a 6/4 fearsome seems pretty good. Now, it makes me cry a little bit because this is a 7-cost card, and I remember, the good old days when Rasa was a 7-cost card that was still a 7/5 fearsome, and as long as something had died on your side, he would kill the 2 weakest units. And who knows, maybe Rasa makes a comeback in these style of decks anyway, because you're going to have so many triggers. But the fact that this is targeted, whereas Rasa was always the 2 weakest, and the fact that, this does still cost 7, where Rasa was nerfed to costing 8, maybe this ends up finding a home. Maybe this starts seeing play in place of Vengeance in certain deck archetypes. I don't think that it is just overall better than Vengeance, because the reality is you can still bank spell mana for Vengeance. You can do it at fast speed. Like, there's a lot of benefits to that card, but getting a 6/4 fearsome body on a powerful effect is relevant. Now, the other card that's here on the left is Spirit Leech. This is a 4-cost 4/1 Shadow Isles unit, and it says on play you kill an ally to draw 2. So this is essentially a 4/1 with Glimpse the Unthinkable attached to it. And this one, because this is like part of the cost of playing it, if you will, this does not have the skill icon, so this cannot be stopped the way Glimpse could. Now, Glimpse as a combat trick and so forth does still have its benefits, and you will likely still want to run versions of that in whatever deck archetype this becomes, but Spirit Leech giving you that activation, giving you that card draw, and preventing your opponent from being able to stop it is very attractive. In fact, aggressive lists that used to run Glimpse, I think, might end up preferring to run Spirit Leech, or again, maybe they go with some sort of split. But if you compare the cost of Glimpse the Unthinkable to this, you're essentially getting a 4/1 body for a 2 mana investment, and then you're still paying the 2 for the Glimpse. So I like this card, at least in theory. The fact that it does cost 4, even though you do get the 4/1 body, is still possibly a detriment, though, because a lot of times Glimpse was nice in aggressive lists because you could still develop your board and use your leftover spell mana for something like Glimpse. You can't with Spirit Leech. yeah, there's pros and cons. This is one of those things where I like it in theory, I like it on paper, but it's going to require testing because it is not 100% just like guaranteed always better. But I can see upside. So now that we've covered this stuff on the left, we're going to switch to the right hand side on the top, because this card is like the activator for these cards, this archetype, potentially Kindred, etc. And that is Fading Icon. This is a 2-cost 3/1 that says when I'm summoned, summon a prey. And the prey is just a 0-cost 0/1. So the idea here is that this card gives you a nice target outside of Cursed Keeper that costs 2, but it gives you a nice target for you to kill your own units and give yourself these triggers. So the go-to used to always be Cursed Keeper. You'd play that on 2, you'd Ravenous Butcher it, you get the 4/3, you get everything else going with it. Fading Icon here is similar. Unlike the Keeper, you don't get like a massive 4/3 body out of it, but you can block with this right away, where Cursed Keeper you couldn't. So it's a little bit more value up front, but again, you also are given that free body that you can use to chew up later for other activations, other abilities. So I like this. Prey is a token. It's not something you'll be able to run in the main deck, but Prey also is still a 0/1 body. So Fading Icon here can give you a 3/1 and give you a free 0/1 blocker. Now, obviously it's not elusive and it can't block fearsome units, but Prey is still a unit, and so it can still do some things for you. Like I actually really like Fading Icon, and it looks so simple, but I think that it opens up a lot of potential avenues for Shadow Isles in the ways that you can exploit this card. So I like it. Next up, we have Unto Dusk. This is a 2-cost burst spell. It says draw 1, and then it has Nightfall that says activate an ally's Nightfall effect, ignoring any targeted portions. Now, first of all, I like that they gave us some additional Nightfall support after the last couple of sets. Whenever you revisit old mechanics, I'm a fan. But I also like this card because it's a very versatile card for Nightfall decks, because you can sometimes decide to play this as a quick burst activator to set up other Nightfall triggers. So just paying 2 to draw 1 and then do something else, like play a Nightfall unit, might be good enough, because again, it's spell mana, it's burst speed, so you might have it banked and it allows you to, you know, play that Aphelios, play that Doom Beast, whatever, and then it replaces itself with the draw 1. And then if you don't need it to activate your other Nightfall activations, you can activate its Nightfall to reactivate Nightfall activations. But it is worth noting which ones this can trigger and which one it can't, and also which ones you don't care if it triggers. So like, I'll give you an example. Lunari Shadestalker, that Nightfall just grants it elusive. Once it's got elusive, you don't need to grant it elusive again. So you don't care if you can reactivate. I mean, technically you can, but you don't care because you don't need to reactivate it again. It's a useless reactivation. Similarly, something like the Cloven Way, its Nightfall is entirely the targeted portion. So reactivating that one is not going to be beneficial because this ignores any targeted portions. But there are some units with gray area. Nocturne is a good example. With Nocturne's Nightfall, you traditionally grant an enemy vulnerable, and then you give enemies -1, -0 this round. So Unto Dusk on a Nightfall doesn't let you do the vulnerable portion, but would still give enemies the -1, -0, and that might be good enough. Now, Doom Beast is a great target. The drain 2 from an enemy nexus would still trigger because it always targets the nexus, so I don't suspect that actually gets ignored. It can be a combat trick of sorts at times. Something like Crescent Guardian, you're granting it the +2/+0 again, taking it up to a permanent 7/3 at that point, because again, it's grant, it's permanent. Or temporary bonuses. So like Stygian Onlooker is a pretty common 1-drop in Nightfall, but a lot of times it's like a 1 and done. You play it, you get that one fearsome attack in, and then it's used as a chump blocker later. But something like Unto Dusk allows you to re-give it fearsome for a round and potentially extend its value. Even something like Diana, if you haven't leveled Diana up yet, you could use something like Unto Dusk in a pinch to grant her, give, it's not grant, to give her Challenger again, because she's not been granted Challenger again. My brain was going faster than my mouth there. So there are some interesting ones to trigger, and then there are ones that are pretty obvious that even if you can trigger them, you don't want them again. The other one that stands out to me as a potential good re-trigger is something like Lunari Priestess. Now, in dedicated Nightfall, like aggro decks and combo decks, a lot of times that card has been cut, but if you are one of the folks who does still run it, Unto Dusk is pretty solid value, because if you are playing the Nightfall version of Unto Dusk, you draw a card and you get to invoke again. And speaking of like invoke, the Eclipse Dragon is another great Nightfall trigger. In fact, Unto Dusk might be the best value with Eclipse Dragon, because you could play Eclipse Dragon with the Daybreak trigger to make a dragon cheaper, and then the 2 mana you save on that dragon the next turn, you could then play the dragon, save your 2 mana that you didn't spend on that to play Unto Dusk, and then trigger the Nightfall on Eclipse Dragon to get another random dragon and a Celestial. So Unto Dusk, neat. I again like the versatility as far as the Nightfall design. You can use it to activate Nightfall stuff or reactivate Nightfall stuff, so it's fun. I like the card. Now, the last card that was revealed today is Song of the Isles. So we've already seen Mark of the Isles, and that's just the make a unit ephemeral and +2/+2. Song of the Isles is 2 mana, burst speed, and you grant an ally lifesteal, fearsome, and ephemeral. Now, it does say grant, so it's permanent. Now, that also means I'm going to say now apparently 5 more times. I apologize. I realize I've just done that. But the thing to note here is that because it's permanent, if you can then remove the ephemeral part, or if the unit loses ephemeral somehow, the lifesteal and the fearsome remain. This is likely meant to be a version of Spirit's Refuge, but for the ephemeral decks. I just think about, if you're playing Zed and you really want to go that route where you are removing ephemeral from your units to grant it to opposing units, something like Song of the Isles could be pretty neat. But I don't know. Ephemeral just hasn't really been a really popular archetype as of late, and the ones that have been popular have been like Lucian, Hecarim, and I don't know whether or not this makes the cut. I mean, it's kind of nice if you play it on units that are already ephemeral, just to get yourself a little bit of healing. So throwing this on a Shark Chariot, for example, is a no risk move, but you're spending 2 mana and a card to gain 3 health, which just doesn't feel great to me. So I don't know. I guess for this card, what I would say is, and this is like my initial gut reaction, is I want to pay attention to what else gets revealed in this set, because right now it just doesn't feel good enough, and the cards that you have to pair it with right now to make it good enough don't see a lot of competitive play. I mean, if that's a deck you enjoy, then by all means go have fun. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but in terms of competitive play, I don't see this card as being too impactful or making a dent, unless there's something else that pops up that we just haven't seen yet. Maybe, and I'm stretching here, maybe in some sort of a tournament format, you run it as like a 1-of in your control list, because you really want to make your Ledros hit for 9, heal for 9, and then have it die and come back to your hand so you can trigger the activation again. Maybe it's a silver bullet tech of sorts. I could see that. But you've got to have, in my opinion, a unit big enough to warrant getting the lifesteal from it, and then it's also got to be a unit that you are comfortable with losing or comfortable with it dying. That's why I was thinking about like Ledros as an example. So that's my initial thought, but that's it for the reveals today. I'm really excited about Kindred, and I want to experiment more with Fading Icon. I think that that card has a lot of potential just as an activator, as a resource for this deck archetype. But as always, I'm going to be looking at the comments in the video. I want to hear about what you're excited about, what you want to theory craft with, etc., etc. If you made it this far, I appreciate you as always. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next reveal video.